So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've come out onto the streets and I'm going to attempt some street photography. Now, I'm a photographer, but I'm not a street photographer. And the only bits of street photography I've done is when I'm going to a place or coming from a place. I've got my camera with me and I'm just noticing things that are happening around me. But I figured, as I tell you guys, just to go out there and do it, I needed to set myself a challenge. Because to be honest, I've been in a little bit of a rut with my photography and I need to get out of that rut. And the one thing is to go out and do a project. So my project is street photography. I really want to learn it. I'm in Bangkok, crazy city with lots of streets, lots of things to photograph in this genre. So I might as well embrace that and see what I can get. See if I can get some good results and see if I can get some nice photos that I'll be proud of. Before heading out, I read a few blogs and watched a few videos, as you do. Sean Tucker suggested shooting in manual mode, and Pierre T. Lambert seems to use a prime lens in quite a few of his videos. So I have my A7 III and the 35mm f1.8 with me. I have no other lenses at all today. I won't have the choice to swap out gear, so all I need to focus on is getting some photographs. Straight away I was feeling so out of practice, so I just needed to start taking some photographs. Along this alley, I spotted this puddle, and reflections are always fun to work with. This is the shot that I got. I think it would have worked better if there was a person walking towards me. Next I saw what looks like a Japanese script on the wall, and it really did stand out. Again, this shot would have been much better with someone in it. A little bit further down, I thought these hats were quite interesting, like a husband and wife who had just come home and hung their hats outside before heading in. As I hadn't warmed up yet, my settings were all over the place and I found it hard to relax into my photography with everything going on around me. I very quickly found that manual mode doesn't suit me for this type of photography. Well, before I've warmed up anyway. So I switched to aperture priority and this really made things a lot easier. And I guess that's the thing with street photography, you can really be out of your comfort zone. So taking out the worry of a few settings with aperture priority really helped. Every now and then there were a few people about, so I'd just let them walk past and then take a photo of them in the environment that they were in. It seems like a good way to get into starting to photograph people in the streets without talking to them, to get a more natural feel. On these back streets there is a lot of amazing artwork, so I figured why not capture it. Just as I was walking past this bit of graffiti, I spotted these interesting picture frames above these doors. This probably would have worked a bit better if I had been at f8 to f11 to get more in focus. Now this next photo didn't really work well at all. I saw these two guys just chilling outside their house and took a quick photograph, but they were too small in the frame. But I did get a little scared, so I just carried on walking and left them to it. Then I very quickly went back to taking photographs without people in them. This door was interesting, but a little bit too busy, but kind of reflects the times with social distancing and doors being closed at the moment. Another thing that shows this are the empty streets. But it didn't take too long before a bike taxi came down, so that was nice for him to give me that focal point. So everywhere is really quiet and there's not many people about at all. But this is kind of good because it's my first time doing street photography, so it's not as intimidating. So hopefully I can get a few photos of a few people, but I'm kind of enjoying it because it's not too intimidating and it doesn't feel like people are going to shout at me for my photography. With this door, for some reason the focus hit the background through the door, but I actually wanted it to be focused on the door. So this shows I really do need to pay more attention. At this point, I seem to be warming up as I'm starting to play with my exposure compensation, but I'm still not changing the aperture. And this is one of the problems with aperture priority. It's really easy to set it and leave it there and almost forget about it. Note to self, start changing the aperture to suit the scene instead of just leaving it. In this instance, I was just trying to find different and interesting angles of this abandoned car. I was keeping it f2 again. I probably should have closed down the aperture a bit, but sometimes that soft background or bokeh makes the subject stand out a little more. Sometimes you'll just be wandering and not finding anything, but it's all about keeping your eyes open. I spotted this lock and thought it was interesting with the green door on one side and the silver door on the other side, and the sunlight hitting it at an angle. Now this family were just chilling out outside their property, and they probably would have made some interesting photographs and portraits, but I kind of bottled it again, said hello and kept on walking. I'm guessing the way to build up that courage is to start taking photos of people doing things. This guy was fixing a post outside his house, so I grabbed a shot, but I still probably could have got a bit closer. Then I had the opportunity to capture this guy, so I grabbed it. It's not the best photo in the world, but now I have a photo of someone coming towards me. And it's these little wins that seem to help build my confidence on the streets. Next we came across a really interesting property. It was quite dark in there, but the shrine was really bright. So I dropped the exposure compensation down to -1.3, so the highlights were protected. I also thought that these gearboxes were interesting all lined up. And with things like this, I always like to get them in groups of 3. From all of these engine parts we're seeing, this is clearly the auto area. And it's crazy to be in a suburb so close to the city centre and have all of these people running small specialty businesses with so many parts stacked up. And this makes for interesting photography. This road we were walking down seemed to be a bit of a thoroughfare, as there were a lot of bikes riding down it. Again, it was good practice to capture them in the environment. As we walked down, these 2 guys were working on car parts. They were deep in concentration and they didn't really know that we were there. So this was another good chance to get a shot of people working. The noise covered the clicks of the camera and they weren't looking up. So I did a flyby shot. With more traffic coming through, it was a good opportunity to get some people coming towards me in my photographs. And I love a good low-down shot with a blurry background. Now it's at this point, I finally changed my aperture from f2 to f1.8. This shows I may have started to think about the settings a bit more after relaxing into the environment, and this is the great thing with semi-automatic modes like aperture priority and shutter priority. You can leave them to their own devices, take a load of photos, and then when you are more relaxed, you can start playing with those settings to get some different shots. Now I've already mentioned this, but I found that at times I was just walking for ages without seeing anything, even though I'm looking around for things to shoot. It's okay to be like this. But if you're okay with this and just keep wandering, something will pop out. I noticed this round window on the right and thought this would make a good frame or a background, so I waited for someone to ride by. Again, I should have closed the aperture down a little bit more to get him in focus and get everything in focus, but I'm shooting at the moment with no real worries about the outcome of the shot. Straight after this, I spotted another auto parts place, and the stacked gearing looked really interesting. Now, as I have that prime on and I don't have a zoom, I have to zoom with my feet. So I walked right up to it. I got a really nice close-up of these gearings. Sometimes I found I was looking for a shot that was just a little bit average. This street was interesting, but this photo didn't amount to much. Again, it's just a case of building up that time behind the camera to get comfortable, especially when photographing people. So I'm including this average one to show you that no one gets amazing shots every time. After being on these back streets, we headed out to some of the busier ones, and this was a little bit more challenging. If you ever want to take photos in the middle of the street, make sure you have some protection. I made sure my back was against this roundabout, so I was less likely to be run over. Now, one of the downsides to being by a roundabout is that you won't get people driving close to you, as they'll be going either left or right by cutting the corners. So I decided to keep the smaller aperture and slower shutter speed and go for some panning shots. These always give the sense of movement, and on this busy street, there was plenty to photograph. Now, with aperture priority, you can manipulate your shutter speed by playing with your aperture. So to slow your shutter speed down, I closed my aperture down, and the camera compensated by slowing that shutter speed to get the same amount of light coming into the camera.
Yeah, I think it's that way.
With the global situation that's going on at the moment, it's amazing how many places are shut. So I decided to capture that in this photograph, and I also liked the colour of these metal gates, so I centered the middle post and got a shot of these. With shots like this, it's really hard to get them spot on, so you need to take your time and you need to take a few different shots until you get it perfectly lined up. And even then, when you feel like you've got it right, you might still have to tweak it and tune it when editing. Now, for some of the photographs, I did find that sometimes I just had to wait for the right moment. I had an idea to frame up these closed shops on the other side of the road and then wait for the right traffic to pass. So I waited, and I waited, and I waited some more until there was just a bike in the shot. And now, I didn't realize it at the time, but a man was also walking by the other way, and he glanced across at me. Again, it's not the best shot in the world, but I kind of like this one, as it really does show that movement and life with closure. Now, a little bit further on than this, we were walking along and I noticed a guy lying down on a table on the other side of the road. So I quickly tried to get the shot, but as I took it, he did start to get up. So this is why it's important to have the settings ready to go in the moment. With the traffic, I did enjoy slowing down that shutter speed and getting them blurring through the shot. I thought this building looked interesting, so I framed it up and waited until a bike passed by. Straight after this, I spotted a tuk-tuk driver asleep in the back of his tuk-tuk, so I tried to get a shot of him, but this didn't really work. There are too many distractions, and I probably should have got a little bit closer, but I didn't really want to wake him up. One place to look for in cities are overpasses, and in Bangkok there are plenty, and they all have low rails and it's easy viewing for the traffic below. However, in looking back at them, these would probably be better at night. With the drivers coming towards me, it was working a little bit better, but it still would be even better again at dusk or nighttime. On the way back home, I saw this lady sat outside taking in her surroundings, and as she looked quite natural, I quickly grabbed a shot in passing. This was very much shooting from the hip. I did get her in focus, and I do quite like this one. Now, in most cities there are homeless problems, and this guy on the left was asleep on the street. I decided to get a shot of him, but immediately regretted it. It didn't make me feel good at all, and it felt like I was almost taking advantage of him a little bit. And this is something I'm probably not going to be doing any more of. Also, I did mess up the settings as well, so it is a rubbish shot anyway. I've passed this next subject a few times, so I really wanted to get a shot of it. It's an old abandoned tuk-tuk, and I thought it might make a good shot. I started by shooting in the portrait orientation, but then very quickly I switched to the landscape orientation. I started off with a big aperture as well to blur out that background. Then I closed down the aperture to slow down the shutter speed, and I kind of like these ones better. Now sometimes I've found myself walking past things and then noticing them after the fact. If this is the case, it's always good to double back on yourself and see if there is a shot there. I thought this tuk-tuk was interesting being full of cardboard, kind of a multi-use vehicle. Landscape orientation didn't work, and I did mess up the settings by rushing to get the shot before that car passed. So I reset the settings to what I wanted and got a vertical image instead, which worked a lot better in framing the house behind it as well. Whenever you're on the streets, you will come across cats and dogs from time to time. Now they say never to work with animals or kids, and they're probably right. This cat was so twitchy and very nervous, so I had to come close to him at a really slow pace. But I did end up getting an okay shot of him.
Yep, I got it.
So whilst crossing the road and trying not to get run over, I got this shot, making sure I was lined up in the middle of the road. It might have been better with someone coming towards me, filling the frame a bit more, but it does show how the busyness of some streets is still there despite the global pandemic, and how life just still goes on. So that was scary, a lot of fun, and I actually quite enjoyed it. It was nothing like I've done before, actually just trying to find subjects, but as you can see, I am absolutely boiling. It's probably around about 34 degrees, but it feels about 44 degrees. So I'm gonna get out these wet things and then I'll talk all about how my day went and how it made me feel and whether I'm gonna be doing it again or not. So let's get out these wet things. That's better. So it feels really good to be out taking photographs again. And I am actually really out of practice, as you probably noticed by that piece that I just put together. Now, when I was growing up, I was quite shy, and I found that shyness coming back when I was out doing street photography, especially if I saw an interesting person that might make an interesting portrait or an interesting photograph. I'd kind of shy away from them or make excuses not to shoot them. So this is something I do need to work on. I have a few ideas, but if you have any ideas in how to help this situation, let me know in the comments below. For the stats, I shot 328 photographs in around about 2 hours. In going through them, I gave a 2-star rating to 121 images, and then I cut it down to 43 images for my 3-star rating, and then 19 for my 4-star rating. Now that would be manageable for most social media folders or catalogs. And say for Instagram or something like 500px or anything like that, I'd probably cut it down to between 5 and 10 photographs. Now, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to see more, let me know in the comments below and also give me a thumbs up. It all helps. And also, if you've been doing any type of street photography, let me know how you got on. If you can see how I could improve, or if you've seen things in this video that can help you improve, let me know in the comments again. It'll be great to start a discussion, and I always try and reply to as many comments as I can when I get the time to do so. Hopefully we can all encourage each other to get better as photographers and to take better photographs. And it's that kind of idea of just getting out there and doing it. So now I'm kind of leading by example, and hopefully this will help me get out of the rut that I've been in. Now, if you like this video, try this one next. And if you want to binge watch a load of my tutorials, click down here. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for weekly videos and tutorials in photography. I'll see you next time.